There's a moment every English learner faces, that awkward pause when your brain is full of perfect sentences, but your mouth refuses to say them. You know the words. You understand everything. But when it's time to speak, your tongue feels heavy, your mouth feels dry, and your mind goes blank. It's as if your thoughts are trapped behind a locked door, and English is the key you can't quite turn. Maria knew that feeling too well. She had studied English for years. She could write essays, answer grammar tests, and even translate complex sentences. But when someone asked her a simple question like, "How's your day?" she froze. Her brain started translating, checking grammar, and correcting itself before her mouth even opened. By the time she was ready to speak, the moment had already passed. One afternoon, while scrolling online, Maria came across a video of an American coach who said something that caught her attention: "You don't train your mind to speak English. You train your mouth." That sentence stayed with her. It sounded strange at first. Wasn't speaking a mental skill? Don't we think before we talk? But the more she thought about it, the more she realized how true it was. When babies learn their first language, they don't study grammar. They don't sit with books or take tests. They listen, they repeat, they play with sounds. Their tongues move, their mouths practice, and their brains catch up naturally. But adults do the opposite. We study rules, memorize vocabulary, and forget to train the one thing that actually speaks, our mouth. Maria decided to test this idea. Instead of spending hours reading grammar books, she began to speak out loud, to herself, to the mirror, even to her phone. At first, it felt strange. She stumbled, mispronounced words, and laughed at herself. But slowly, something magical happened. Her tongue began to move more freely. Her sentences flowed faster. The fear started to fade. One morning, while making coffee, she said out loud, "I love mornings like this." It wasn't a study exercise, it was just a thought, but in English. She smiled. It felt natural. For the first time, English didn't feel like a subject in school. It felt like a part of her. That's when she realized fluency isn't about knowing every word. It's about letting your mouth move before your mind starts to judge. The more she spoke, the more confident she became. She started reading stories aloud, repeating short dialogues, and imitating the rhythm of American voices she heard online. She stopped caring about being perfect. She cared about being comfortable. Have you ever noticed how a song sticks in your head? And you can sing the lyrics even without trying? That's what Maria was training her mouth to do, to let English roll out naturally, without pressure, without fear. It wasn't about thinking anymore. It was about rhythm, sound, and movement. One day, she met a tourist who asked her for directions. Without thinking, she replied fluently, "Oh sure, just go straight and take a left at the corner." It surprised her. The words came so easily she almost didn't recognize her own voice. For years, she had been preparing for that moment, but it happened only when she stopped preparing and started speaking. The truth is, speaking a language is a physical act. Your lips, your tongue, your jaw, they're muscles. And like any muscle, they need training. You can't become a fluent speaker by reading or thinking alone. You must let your mouth feel the language. That's why singers practice scales. That's why actors rehearse lines. It's muscle memory, not mental memory, that makes their speech natural. English works the same way. The more you move your mouth in English, the more your brain begins to relax and trust the process. Maria turned her study time into speaking time. While cooking, she described what she was doing. "I'm chopping onions. I'm boiling water. While walking, she imagined small conversations. Excuse me, where's the bus stop? It's over there, near the park. Slowly, her world became filled with English sounds, not English rules, and you know what? Her confidence grew faster than she ever expected. It wasn't magic. It was muscle. Still, there were days when she felt shy. She worried people would laugh at her accent. But every time she hesitated, she reminded herself, no one laughs at a baby learning to talk. Why should adults be any different? Mistakes weren't proof of weakness, they were signs of practice. She began to see her mouth as an instrument. If it made the wrong sound, she didn't stop speaking, she adjusted, just like tuning a guitar. The more she practiced, the more beautiful her speech became. As weeks passed, something unexpected happened. Her thoughts began forming in English before she realized it. She was no longer translating from her native language. English had become automatic, just like walking or breathing. That's when she truly understood what it meant to train your mouth, not your mind. Because when your mouth leads, your mind follows. One evening, as she watched a movie without subtitles, she caught herself whispering along with the characters. It wasn't forced. It was fun. She wasn't learning English anymore, she was living it. So, ask yourself, are you training your mind or your mouth? Do you think in English, or do you let English move through you? Maria's journey teaches us one thing: fluency isn't built in silence. It's built in sound. Weeks turned into months, and Maria's relationship with English began to feel different. It was no longer a stranger she had to impress. It was more like a friend she could relax around. The fear that once made her silent now seemed distant, almost forgotten. Weeks turned into months, and Maria's relationship with English began to feel different. It was no longer a stranger she had to impress. It was more like a friend she could relax around. The fear that once made her silent now seemed distant, almost forgotten. She noticed that her mouth had learned something her brain could never teach: rhythm. Every language has its own music, and English has its own beat, its own rise and fall. When she listened to American speakers, she realized they didn't always speak with perfect grammar. But they had flow. They had confidence. They trusted their voice. That's when Maria started to focus on sound, not rules. She listened carefully to how words connected, how want to became wanna, how going to turned into gonna. She smiled every time she caught these small details because they made her feel closer to the real rhythm of the language. At first, she practiced by repeating after movie characters. She'd pause, mimic, and replay. Sometimes she exaggerated the sounds, letting her tongue and lips stretch beyond what felt natural. But soon, it became effortless. The way a dancer moves after hours of practice, her mouth began to move with grace, without thinking, and something deeper began to happen. Her confidence changed her energy. She started joining conversations she used to avoid. When someone asked, "How's your day?" she no longer froze. She spoke without fear. She even laughed mid-sentence, something she had never done before in English. People noticed. A colleague once told her, "You sound so natural now. It's like you're not even thinking." That compliment stayed in her heart because it was exactly what she had been training for, not perfection, but ease. She remembered all those days she'd sat silently, afraid to speak until her sentence was perfect. Now she realized that waiting for perfection is like waiting for a bus that never comes. You can't think your way into fluency. You can only speak your way into it. Maria began helping her friends who also struggled with speaking. They asked her what she studied, what grammar book she used, what secret method she followed. She smiled and said softly, "I trained my mouth, not my mind." Her friends looked puzzled at first, just as she had been when she first heard that phrase. But then she showed them what she meant. They gathered at her house on weekends, speaking out loud, reading short stories together, and playing language games. They laughed at their mistakes, clapped when someone improved, and realized how fun speaking could be when fear was gone. Maria's favorite exercise was simple. She called it talking to the world. Every morning, she spoke about anything she saw. "The sky is clear today. I'm making breakfast. This tea smells amazing." It didn't matter what she said. What mattered was that she kept her mouth moving in English. It became a daily ritual, a conversation between her and the language itself. And in that conversation, her mouth stayed active, her rhythm stayed alive, and her confidence stayed strong. Over time, she learned something powerful. Fluency doesn't grow in silence. It grows in sound. Every word spoken, no matter how small or broken, was a step toward natural speech. One evening, she found an old notebook where she used to write grammar rules and long vocabulary lists. She smiled as she turned the pages filled with translations and memorized sentences. That version of herself was gone now, replaced by someone who didn't just know English, but felt it. Her mouth had become her teacher, and her voice was her classroom. When she walked down the street, she began to notice English everywhere, on signs, in songs, on people's shirts. It was as if the world had started speaking back to her. She could hear English not as words anymore, but as rhythm, as sound, as music. That's when Maria realized something beautiful. The goal of speaking English isn't to sound perfect. It's to connect. It's to share your thoughts, your stories, your laughter. The accent doesn't matter, the grammar doesn't matter as much as the message. When your words carry emotion, people listen. One day, she got invited to speak at her office's international meeting. It was her first time speaking English in front of a crowd. As she walked to the microphone, she could feel her heart pounding. But instead of panicking, she took a deep breath and said to herself, "Trust your mouth." And she did. Her words flowed. Her smile grew. Her voice filled the room. For the first time, she wasn't translating or overthinking. She was living the language, sentence by sentence, word by word. When she finished, the audience applauded. A few even told her how confident and clear she sounded. Later that night, as she sat by her window, she thought about the journey. She remembered the fear, the hesitation, the silence, and how all of it disappeared once she decided to speak. Not just study, fluency, she now believed, was never about talent. It was about courage. The courage to make mistakes, to sound silly, to try again. The courage to keep your mouth moving even when your mind says you can't. So if you ever feel stuck, remember Maria's story. Don't wait until you know everything. Don't wait until your grammar is perfect. Start now. Speak to your mirror, to your phone, to your pet, to your reflection in the window. Speak English every day, even if your voice shakes. Because every sound, every word, every attempt trains your mouth, and little by little, it trains your confidence too. Let English become the air you breathe, not the test you fear. Feel it in your mouth, hear it in your rhythm, and let it live in your daily life. Maria's final words to her students were simple: your mouth is smarter than you think. Let it learn. Let it play. Let it speak. And from that day on, her students began to see English differently, not as a mountain to climb, but as a song to sing. And if you're watching this, remember, the real secret to speaking naturally and confidently isn't in your mind, it's in your mouth. Speak every day, even when you don't feel ready. Because readiness doesn't come before speaking, it comes from speaking. I share stories like this every day to help you grow your English the natural way. So don't forget to subscribe and join me again for the next story, one that might just change the way you think about learning forever.